Hi, class of 2026. Welcome back to our English lessons presented by myself, Miss Lichuti. Who can believe it? It's another year, yet another opportunity to strive for nothing but excellence, right? Let me just take you through what is needed from your good selves to achieve excellence in English. And it is, of course, doable. I get a lot of questions that is it possible to get a distinction? Yes, it's possible. You can even score up to 90 plus, right? What is important is that you must know the nitty-gritties of each and every paper. You've got your paper 1, you've got your paper 2, you've got your paper 3. The common thread for all these 3 papers is language, because at the end of the day, we need language to answer questions based on comprehension, on visual literacy, on summary. We also use language to construct ideas for paper 3. We use language again to construct ideas to write creatively in paper 3. So at the center of it all is a language. So what you also need to do as a grade 12 learner or grade 10 or grade 10 or 11, make sure that you know language structure and conventions. Know all the dynamics of language, starting with your parts of speech, your tenses, your active and passive voice, concord, as well as your grammar rules, your homophones, homonyms. The list is endless. Why do I say that? Remember, language has got so many rules to it, right? And then if you are not, your language is not, rather let me rephrase to say, if your language is not intact, you run the risk of even if you may know content for literature, you run the risk of not having the correct skill to articulate your views, the correct skill to write or present your ideas. So at the center of it all, it means that you must study language, you must practice language, and ultimately ensure that you enrich your own vocabulary, right? Vocabulary is important because to present ideas in a form of writing or to present ideas in a form of verbal communication, vocabulary plays a major role. So therefore, even though because of how frantic the academic year tends to be in grade 12, we all want to push literature, we want to finish our novels, we want to finish our set poems, we want to finish that drama. In the midst of all of that, don't overcompensate on enriching language skills. Language skills are vital because, like I've said, it's a weave, is a thread that connects all the 3 papers together. Now, also what is also of paramount importance is that don't focus on a particular paper and neglecting others. You may score good in paper 1. If you're neglecting your literature or your creative writing, you run the risk of not maintaining or achieving a distinction in English. Now, I'm going to shift gears a bit and jump to paper 2, which is predominantly your literature paper. Learners, even those who are excellent, have a tendency of being lazy to read your set genres. And with that said, you want to now go to the summary version of the novel. You want to go to YouTube and check the summarized version of Life of Pi, the summarized version of The Picture of Dorian Gray. For home language, for English FAL, you want to get the summarized version of Cry the Beloved Country, because it's quite a lengthy novel. But I would say that start the year, punch the year with hard work, right? In as much as in your timetable, you'll have more of content subject with key reference to their difficulty and the challenges that you may have. Squeeze in language daily, especially the reading part. You don't need to wait for your educator to finish the novel. Every night, just read a page, read a page, read a page, and then ensure that when you now go to previous question papers or the summarized version of the novel, you have done justice to the reading part. Because I will tell you, you watch a movie of Life of Pi, some of the characters are not in that movie. You will get very much confused with how events of the plot unfold if you read or watch a movie instead of reading the actual novel. Don't wait up until the 11th hour to try to read everything, because remember, with literature, it's more like eating an elephant. You can't eat it whole, bit by bit, because there's so many aspects that come with reading literature, such as understanding the dynamics of literature concepts and literary devices, understanding the writer's style, understanding the writer's diction, in the writer's narrative, understanding the manner in which the writer convey his ideas using through characters, understanding the plot and so forth. Now all these elements now come into play as and when you read. Therefore, it is important to ensure that you do justice to the reading part, right? And then what is also important in paper 2, know the jargon, if not the language for paper 2. Know the language of literature. Study your literature elements prior reading. Remind yourself of your imagery. Remind yourself of the poetic devices and their effectiveness. Remind yourself again of character and characterization. Remind yourself of plot. What do we mean by the plot has reached the climax, themes, the denouement, all of those literature elements. And I've got a video. I'll just attach the link to the prescription box of the links that I normally say that before you can even go to any previous question paper, do justice to the understanding of the contents first. And once you understand the content first, then you master the skill of understanding the brain of the examiner, to say how normally examiners coin question for a literature and versus what is expected from you as a candidate to successfully respond to literature questions. So you start first with the reading, but not only reading the plot and events and characters and so forth, but being cognizant to the dynamics, if not literary concepts, that are featured in that particular genre that you'll be doing at your respective schools. So there's no shortcut to paper 2. There's no shortcut to paper 2. Whoever can say to you just go to the summarized version will actually be fooling you. You need to do justice to the reading part. You must also understand the structure and of any examination paper, like your paper 1 in FAL. You know that it's comprehension, it's summary, it's visual literacy, it's language. You do the same with paper 2 for both English home language and as well as English first additional language. You do the same again with paper 3. The fallacy is that people tend to believe that because the paper is titled named creative writing, you just write the way that you like. No. The same way that I've said that you must do justice to literature by reading, you must also do justice to paper 3. And bearing in mind, candidates, that paper 3 carries the bulk of the marks. This is where the foundation of your English, it's a determiner for English paper 3 because it carries the bulk of the marks. Just because it's titled creative writing, it does not mean you just write for the sake of writing. There again, you also need to be pragmatic in your writing. You need to know your format and structure and style of the different writing pieces. You must know all the types of essays. You must know what it is that makes an outstanding, for one to write an outstanding piece. What is that you must incorporate in your writing, such as the use of idiomatic expressions, the use of senses, all the 5 senses to breathe life into your story, such as a sense of smell, a sense of touch, the use of eyesight, the use of emotive words, the use of proverbs as well, to strengthen and heighten your story so that your story has what you call a flavor, right? So know the formats. The common mistake that most candidates commit in paper 3 is that they would rush to write without reading what is that the examiner wants you to write a particular email for, or a particular letter for, or an obituary about what, or an essay about what. Even when you write an essay, although an essay you cannot sectionalize an essay, because in one essay you can have an essay that has complementary elements of different essays, such as you can narrate still reflecting at the same time, you can narrate still having elements of descriptive in your narrative. But however, what is important is that you must hone that writing skill, and that comes with a lot of practice. Remember what I've said at the beginning of the video to say vocabulary is important. If you don't have a rich vocabulary, you only have a scanty vocabulary, you run the risk of not being in a position to convey a thought-provoking story when you are writing an essay, to convey an essay that you are able to use imagery, to paint imagery using words. So it is important, please ensure that you enrich your own vocabulary. And you know, to enrich vocabulary, you don't need a formal classwork. You can do it daily in your daily conversations, in your daily readings. When you come across a new word, grab a dictionary. Now you even have dictionaries on your phone. Find the definition of the word, know how the word is used as a verb versus as a noun, and so forth. Right. And then with all that is said, once you have done justice to all of that and more, that's when you can start now to approach or use previous question papers so that you familiarize yourselves with the language of examination. You need to know how questions are coined in comprehension in paper 1 for both English FAL and English home language. For English home language, predominantly it's filled with higher order questions, such as the questions around diction, the writer's attitude, where you need to critically discuss the writer's attitude as in the presented facts in the paragraph, the use of paradox or irony if it's there in a comprehension. What is the purpose of including a paradoxical statement in a comprehension? Those are predominantly higher order questions that you need to train yourself by revising a lot of previous question papers. For example, again with English first additional language, if the examiner says using your own words, you must be in a position to successfully use the appropriate synonyms to convert those facts into your own words without digressing from the context, right? And that is also, it needs a lot of practice where you expose yourself to a number of comprehension questions without looking necessarily at the marking guideline, but also training yourself on how to better respond to questions, especially to fully substantiate the responses for higher order questions. Okay, so with all that is said, it means that in as much as you take time for your maths, for any other content subject, you are prompted to take time for and dedicate time for English as well. It needs a lot of practice, it needs a lot of reading, it needs a lot of language. And with language, like I'm going to reiterate what I've just said, that what is also vital in language is understanding also your grammar rules, you know, your concord. In home language, you must know your tautology, your malapropism, your spoonerism. You must know all of that, you know, your active and all that I'm saying is right here in my channel. So don't look into the recent videos, go to the playlist in my channel where I take you through all the language components individually before you can study them or use a comprehensive question 5 that tests all the language components. You need to study first them individually. You must know how to correct errors in English first additional language. You must know active and passive voice and its rules. You must know tenses. You must know report and reported speech, your homophones, homonyms, antonyms, your prefix, your suffix. You see it's a lot, but you need to study them as individual components before you can comprehensively respond to them in question 5. So I would always advise that for language questions, study the language components, including grammar rules for each and every language dynamic or component. Then once you're satisfied that you have done justice to all of those, that's where you can start with your text editing for home language or question 5 for English first additional language. So with that said, if you take time, you commit, you read your genres, you don't rush to summarize versions of any particular genres that you are doing at your school. You ensure that you enrich your own vocabulary. You also practice writing, because paper 3 does not mean you write as you please. There are formats, there are styles, there's a tone, there's a register that you need to use pertaining to whatever the examiner wants you to write, be it is an obituary, a friendly letter, a business letter, an email. All of those, they need to be studied, because before content is marked, we check if your format and structure is intact. right? And then you go to the content to say, did you present the ideas accordingly for this particular format, or a piece of writing that you are asked to write. So it therefore says that you are prompted to work hard, but I'm telling you, with hard work and doing all that I've just listed here, it is doable. It's 100% possible for you to attain a distinction in English. Stay tuned. In my next videos, we are going to look into language dynamics again and do text editing for home language, as well as question 5 for English FAL. And then we're going to move into poetry, where I teach you again how to approach poems, how to analyze poems, and then of course how to write poetry essay with home language, unseen poem, how to approach unseen poem, how to also write a correct poetry essay, and then with English FAL, how then to successfully respond to contextual questions based on poetry. With all that is said, please check the playlist for all the papers. It's there in my YouTube channel, and stay tuned for more. Once more, I wish you all the best of luck for the 2026 academic year. We shall work hard together and make sure that you excel in English. Thank you.